I'm David Pakman in Denver at the National Conference for Media Reform. I'm here with Sarah Van Gelder, the executive editor and co-founder of Yes. Really great to see you.
Great to see you too. Glad to be back.
Let's start with the panel that you have that you're going to be doing tomorrow at the conference. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're going to do a conference panel on solutions journalism. This is sort of a new thing for the Media Reform Conference, but I think it's something that people are starting to get very excited about, which is the idea that it's important to do more than cover the problem. That if we want to be a vital democracy, people need to know what the solutions are, where they can plug in what other people are doing about the problems. Because really the solutions are not going to come from the top, they're not going to come from big corporations or from the federal government. They're coming from ordinary people who are making changes at the grassroots, who are building social movements, who are making things happen. So
this is a huge problem on mainstream corporate media, right? Which is, we could take any issue. Debt and deficit comes to mind over the last few months, where the way a lot of these stories are framed is really just to state what the problem is. Right. And even when you have supposed opposing views with different ways to think of solving the problem, a lot of times it's just restating why the other person's solution simply won't work, and there's really no progress made on solutions, and that just seems to be missing from the kind of corporate media landscape, if I'm seeing it correctly.
Yeah, I think that's right, and the solutions that it just take that one example, the debt situation. One of the interesting new iterations of Occupy is that Occupy has gotten involved in strike debt. So they're starting to look at, what happens to young people who are graduating from college with huge amounts of debt, and what can we do about that? How can we, actually resolve that so that the young people aren't going into their adult life with that huge burden? And what does that mean about the financial system that we have, that so many Americans can only get by through so much debt? How can we have a different kind of an economy, if you want to go one step deeper? How can we have a different kind of an economy where the wealth is more distributed, so that people don't have to go into that kind of debt just to make ends meet?
Well, I think with Occupy, that was, you could look at the kind of two corporate media narratives on Occupy. One was really to be critical of the protesters themselves. They're going to the bathroom on police cars, they're hippies, they're getting in the way. And the other one was, hey, they have a right to be there and it's great what they're doing. But there wasn't really a serious discussion on mainstream corporate media about exploring, well, what aspects of the economic system should maybe be looked at more closely, and what aspects are working and which ones aren't. It wasn't part of either side of most of the coverage around Occupy. Right,
and it was one of the really important parts of that movement was the notion of we are the 99%, because I think that brought front and center how skewed our society has gotten in terms of inequality. And we don't have to have that kind of a society. And that's where the solutions journalism comes in, is to say, we don't want a society in which most of the wealth is going to the 1%. We actually want a society where it's far better distributed, and where we're really careful about where that wealth comes from, so it doesn't degrade our environment, so we can have a sustainable environment and a future for our children and a much better life for everyone, instead of having all the wealth go to the 1%.
When we talk about solutions journalism and alternative media and corporate media, what really is the role in your mind and the importance of independent and non-big corporation run media in getting some of the ideas out there? I mean, it is the National Conference for Media Reform, so I would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, I think there's a lot of these stories that just, as you say, are not being told in the corporate media. And if you want to have a vital democracy, it's absolutely essential that people have ideas about where they can go, what they can do, how they can make change happen. So those people need to be covered. And that's one of the roles that independent media can play, is to pay attention to people at the grassroots, people who may have a worldview that's a little more expansive than what you see in corporate media. They may value other things, not just economic growth and what is the stock market saying today, but how are their children doing? How are their communities doing? What's the quality of the water and the quality of the air?
So really, not to put words in your mouth, but it sounds like you're saying problem one is how corporate media is covering certain stories, but then also, maybe more importantly, it's just the stories that aren't even discussed on a lot of broadcast audio and video channels.
That's right, the stories and also the people, because the corporate media tends to go back to the same pundits who are well within the dominant worldview to get their opinions. So there's, you sort of hear the same discussion rehashed over and over again.
An echo chamber of sorts.
Exactly,
yeah.
And some of the things that majorities of Americans want are not even discussed. Single-payer healthcare is a great example of that.
Very popular in polls, not really discussed in any kind of real way.
Exactly, exactly. And it's important, again, if we take democracy seriously, that we open up the dialogue to include solutions that those in power may or may not be interested in furthering.
Sarah Van Gelder with me at the National Conference for Media Reform in Denver, Colorado. Great to see you again.
Thank you so much.